Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Mark on the World show. We're producing this episode for GoodCrowd.info, and our special guest today is Chris Harden, who is one of the founders of Trobo. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Devin.
Well, Chris, tell people what Trobo is. Let's get a little context around our discussion today.
Okay. So Trobo is a storytelling robot. It's a plush robot that reads stories about science and math to children ages 2 and above. And it does so via a Bluetooth connection with an iPad or an iPhone. So we have an associated application that is a connected device experience where children use stories to learn about science and math. The children are put into the stories with an avatar, their name, their age, that sort of thing. And they go on these adventures and get inspired to read more about science and math or ask mom and dad questions.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, I really appreciate you introducing that product. I'm really curious, and I think our audience is especially curious about how you conducted your crowdfunding campaign. And so I wonder, because you were rather successful, you raised $61,000 on Kickstarter. So let's start with, if you would, telling us about your crowdfunding campaign, how it came about, and what were the keys to success.
So the crowdfunding campaign, we felt pleased with it. We were lucky, we didn't really know what we were doing early on before the campaign started. Then I started listening to a guy named Richard Bliss and started reading a podcast by a guy named Jamie Stegmaier. And we began to realize there was a lot more work to make Kickstarter successful than just making it happen. So we went full time. We stopped development altogether on the application because we had prototypes and all that. And we brought our crowds. Jeremy has a large crowd, 92, and we run in different circles. Jeremy's the co-founder of Trobo, by the way, Jeremy Scheinberg. So he and I are the two founders. You can learn more online about that. And basically, we went full time at all the marketing materials up front. We told everyone about day one. You got to be there for day one. And what we found is that a lot of people didn't even know what Kickstarting was and didn't know what crowdfunding was. So there was a lot of consumer education around what the site was. Even halfway through our campaign, people were still asking, is this a charity, or do I get stock in your company, or what? So that was one thing, is getting everyone there for day one, having a plan for day two. And one of our mistakes is we didn't know what to do for day three. So we sort of ran around and figured out things to do. The other thing that we did is we planned to be doing something or somewhere every day of the campaign. So we were pitching at 1 Million Cups, which is sort of an entrepreneurial venue, and other tech meetups. We were blogging. We were going to conventions. We were out in Las Vegas, and every day we were posting and blogging and giving people valuable content so that they could share that content about the Kickstarter campaign. And effectively, it was a content marketing campaign. And that was really, really intense for us. It was a 30-day campaign. There was one day where we actually presented in 3 different cities, and we had 4 presentations. Jeremy was in Miami, I was in Tampa, and then we came back to Orlando. So what we learned is that you have to own it and you have to work at it full time. If you're doing anything else, your campaign could in fact fail.
Wow, so that's a great lesson. What was your goal on Kickstarter?
60,000. So we just made it that Sunday night. It was ending on a Sunday night at midnight. We had not made the goal of 60,000 yet. It was getting down to the wire when we were getting a little loopy. So Jeremy started tweeting silly science jokes, puns and such for everyone who would contribute. And so the last hour or so, we were kind of loopy, but we finally made it over the line. And what we found out later is there were a lot of people were pulling for us and watching the campaign that we either didn't even know them or we didn't know they were supporting us. So that was fun.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear and exciting. Well, $61,000 is frankly not a lot of money. Where did you go from there to get this funded?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you ask how we spent the $61,000, we say, well, we spent $240,000 of it. So Trobo is a very expensive product. I think sometimes people don't know how much it costs to make software. In addition to the $61,000 that we got for Kickstarter, we also were granted a National Science Foundation Phase 1 grant. And that was to research putting Trobos in schools. So that was a $150,000 grant. We used that to hire a team of master's students from a local gaming out parcel of the University of Central Florida here called FIA. And we also used the Kickstarter money to hire engineering. And so our team suddenly went to 12 people, and we were able to fund all of that with the Kickstarter funds and this grant. So in addition to those fundings, Jeremy and I also put more money, more of our own money in there too, of course. And now today we're selling the units, and we're able to get income coming into the company.
That's tremendous. I really, it's fun to hear about this. So let's talk a little bit about more about how you use that money. I think people often assume that the money they raise on Kickstarter is going to be adequate. You spend about 4 times as much money as you raised on Kickstarter in order to deliver the goods. Describe a little bit more detail. Where did that money go?
Yeah, let me say up front that we knew we needed somewhere around 100,000, maybe 150,000 to do it the way we wanted to. But there's a psychological conversation around what your basic price is going to be. So that $60,000 goal was the bare bones, very basic app. I was going to draw everything that you see in the app. There's a lot of lovely illustration in the app. And it wasn't going to be an extensible, scalable, skinnable architecture like it is now. The fact that we cleared the $60,000 just by $1,000 makes us feel like we made the right decision there, but it got us started. And then after that, we were able to make some traction and, of course, land the grant, and that was a big help. We spent the money, first off, Amazon and Kickstarter take a cut, around 10% of your Kickstarter funds off the top. Then you get the cash. We spend it on a patent for the design because you have to protect yourself if you can. The rest of the Kickstarter funds went to app development. So the architecture is an HTML architecture, but it's skinnable. You can put a whole different brand of content on there. So we could, in fact, license something like Scooby-Doo and make Scooby-Doo Adventures, to give you an example. And then the grant funds were all the content. Content's really expensive to draw and illustrate with good quality. So the fact that you could reskin this and you have different avatars on the fly, you can put the child's skin tone in there, their hairstyles, and all that will change on the fly, makes it a really powerful platform. So a lot of all the grant funding went to content, as well as the research for the next generation Trobo, interviews with teachers and other educators. And then finally, part of the Kickstarter funds, I misspoke earlier, part of the Kickstarter funds went to actually manufacturing the dolls. So we had built prototypes. We'd actually manufactured 100 of these things beforehand, got all that vetted. And then when it came to actually manufacture our Kickstarter run, which is about 2,000 units, that money went to making those and shipping those. FCC testing was another one because it's a wireless device in there. And I think you'll find, especially if you're new to manufacturing and retail like we were, getting them on a boat and over here from China was very time consuming and expensive. And we spent a lot of our schedule executing on getting the things over here and getting them safety tested and FCC tested.
Well, one of the things we see with Kickstarter is that almost everybody misses their scheduled delivery dates. How did you do?
We did well. So, but we were wise, I think. We set our Kickstarter delivery date a year later. So we landed our Kickstart at the end of the first part of October, and we said we will deliver by November the following year. And we did. We were actually shipping that October. And so almost everyone got their units in late October or early November. Internally, we had hoped we were going to get there by July and deliver really early, but the FCC testing surprised us, and that caused a lot of delays.
Now, one key thing that I think you experienced was you got a lot of great media attention, some national media exposure, and I trust that really helped your campaign, didn't it?
It absolutely did. We were really lucky, you know. Oddly enough, we didn't have a good plan for PR going into the Kickstarter campaign. So just as a sidebar, we tried some PR near the end of it to help, and we just missed the boat with it. So all of our PR, all of our press that we did get, that wasn't, you know, we paid like $700 to a PR firm at the tail end. But the real press we got, TechCrunch, USA Today, People, those magazines, those presences were really powerful for our Kickstarter campaign, especially TechCrunch. TechCrunch came to us right in the middle of what's the slump or the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge during the Kickstarter campaign, when you can't find people and, you know, they're waiting till the end or what have you. So they came in and gave us a really lovely bump, and from then on we started just chugging on up towards our goal. So that was huge, and that came from some networking that we did. We have a really strong community of support here in Orlando, and by meeting a few people, we were able to find the TechCrunch representative who worked with us to put the article out there.
Fantastic. It's a great and important lesson, I think, to take away from your experience is the importance of the media, because it validates your story and it exposes your story to a much bigger audience than you have, absent that, right?
It does. And here's the lesson we took away from Kickstarter on that. If you're planning a Kickstarter, you need to know media people now. Get to know them now. Go to their blogs, start participating in what they're saying, and figure out whether they're even talking about something that's relevant to your Kickstart. Because by the time you're in the Kickstart, you can't go cold calling a PR person. It sounds horrible. They are so bothered by so many other people asking for support during a Kickstarter campaign. It's not friendly. So get to know PR people now, media people now, but get to know them because you want to establish a relationship with them. And then by the time your Kickstart comes, they trust you, they know who you are, and if they have the opportunity, they may help. Yeah,
great point, great insights. Well, Chris, I want to get a couple of personal insights from you as an entrepreneur. Clearly, you have had some great media attention, and you have become a role model to many people. Who do you look up to as a role model?
Well, Jeremy and I talk a lot about this, actually. For me, it's Stan Lee. He's the guy who created Spider-Man and over 300 other comic book characters, the Avengers, X-Men, the Hulk. He was at the height of the comic book period. What inspires me about Stan is that he's as nice as he can be, but he's literally changed the world. You talk about changing the world. He's done it. People are inspired by his work all the time. His legacy will live on well past him. And I want to do that with Trobo. That's my big goal, is to inspire kids well past me being gone. For Jeremy, he's a big fan of Elon Musk. So Elon Musk is trying to solve some super huge, big problems, and he can inspire people doing that, whether you're talking about his efforts on Tesla, SpaceX, you name it. The guy tries to hit really big problems, inspire people along the way. So those are our two inspirational mentors, I guess.
Fantastic. Now, let's talk a little bit about why you created this toy, this STEM toy for kids. What's going on there?
Well, Jeremy and I are fathers. We're both fathers. He has 2 children in the age range that we developed Trobo for, and I have one child, my son. And what we found is that they were getting some tablet time, iPads and phones, and the games and the apps that are out there aren't very inspirational. They're usually mindless. They're Candy Crush and these other kinds of cupcake apps and stuff that don't really educate the children, don't take the opportunity to educate them or inspire them to go and learn something else. So we began to realize this one night at this startup weekend where Trobo was started, and we said, how can we reach them with something that's adorable and lovable and memorable that tells stories, because that's very powerful, and how can we inspire them? And that's how we came up with Trobo, was this relatable character and storyteller that inspires our children and gives us this guilt-free experience on iPads. When we give our iPad to a child, they're not playing some mindless game. They're learning and getting inspired, and that's a real big deal for us.
How do your kids like it?
Well, they love it. So it's kind of interesting because early on, especially Jake, which is Jeremy's son, and Asher's my son, they're so young they didn't know that we were making Trobo. So they were really great test subjects because we could just put the app in front of them and see how it happened. Now all of our children are old enough to know Trobo, and they love it almost like a sibling. So they sleep with their Trobos. They're excited when we sell some, and they want to know what's happening next. So they love Trobo, and they always have, because they're the inspiration for the product.
That's great. Well, one last question. Everyone who is watching the show has, a variety of interests and objectives, but one thing we all have in common is we want to do more good in the world. What's an impact hack that you would share that would allow us to do more good? Well, for me, I tend to work more than anybody that I know. So I look at every hour of the day as whether or not I've created enough high value density. That's sort of what I call it. And I don't sleep a lot.
So I work a lot of hours, but I'm very focused during those hours, and I try not to meander. My wife tells me I have ADD, so I have to be very focused. And if I'm doing something like driving, then I'm learning. So I'm consuming what I can't create, and then I create during the hours that I can create. Jeremy is very health conscious. He is focused on, in the mornings about 3 times a week, he goes, before he starts his day and he exercises, he does these boot camp routines, and he keeps a very balanced health versus work relationship. And he says that helps him to stay very high energy during the day as well. So what we both do is try to reach high levels of energy during the day and create value every hour, so that we're not wasting that time or wasting our energy.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, it's been great to visit with you, and I'm sorry Jeremy couldn't join us today, but we appreciate you taking the time. Before you go, tell us how people can learn more about Trobo, how they can buy one, where they can find it, how they can connect with you to learn more about crowdfunding or entrepreneurship.
Okay, you can visit mytrobo.com. And we're on most social media as MyTrobo. So Twitter, Facebook, all of those are MYTROBO. You can email us at info@mytrobo.com. And if you want to, you can call us at 469-708-7626. Otherwise, just reach out to us. We always handle the email. We'll come back to you real quickly.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you very much for being with us today. We wish you every success with MyTrobo.
Thank you, Devin.
Now, let's do some good.
Let's do some good.